I'm Lee. I'm one of the owners here at AVP, one of the partners. Gary is my business partner sitting there at that table. Really glad you guys all came, so thank you very much for coming. To give you a presentation today, what we're hoping to do is give you guys skill set and the language and the ability to talk very confidently with your brides about what is available in the world of decor, lighting, wedding design, illumination. We're going to give you a run through the technology that's available, some of the differences, some of the different buzzwords you hear when people are talking about wedding lighting. Give you some great examples of why we use lighting, what lighting is good for, what it allows us to do compared to other styles of decor. We'll take you through some typical packages available from different vendors. Interestingly, more and more types of vendors are starting to offer wedding lighting. You can get it from DJs and caterers and stuff like that now, beyond just lighting professionals. So we'll talk about some of those packages. Design considerations, that'll be a little bit about color selection and how to look at a room and decide what would look good in that room, what you can use, what you can apply to a room to make it something special for your event. And like I said, we'll talk about some of those buzzwords, some of the words that get thrown around with lighting. We'll try to clarify some of those for you guys. Before we get going, first we want to thank the people that helped us put this together. IK Catering for lunch. Brian, I want your mashed potato recipe at some point. Those mashed potatoes were delicious. Kara from A Cake to Remember. We look forward to the cake here in a little while. We'll have that just after we finish here, guys. We'll serve some dessert. And we were looking for a planner's perspective when we were putting this together. We're all technology people. What we really wanted was someone to let us know if we were communicating effectively and what you guys would be looking for. So Angela from Angela's Elegant Events helped us out with that. So Angela, thank you a whole lot for your perspective. A little bit about AVP. We're a full-service event production company. We do sound, lighting, video, and customized design. We've been doing it for about 20 years with events ranging from small private parties up to huge arena shows. Any of you go to the Richmond Bridal Showcase at the Convention Center? We do the big fashion show there at that event, for example. So we're sort of all over the board, and we have found over the past few years, perhaps in part due to the success of the various television shows about wedding planning and stuff, that the level of what brides are looking for in lighting has come up to that professional expectation. So we're really pleased that that market now exists, and it gives you guys such a great opportunity to create, to take a plain room and turn it into something different. I am Lee Dickinson. I'm one of the partners here. I got my degree in theatrical design, which was lighting design and set design from Virginia Tech in 2004. After that, I worked for a couple different production companies in the area, as well as for a couple different dance troupes and performance groups as their lighting designer. So I've been doing this for a while, including working for Gary since about 1999, and then in about 2008, we merged my consulting company and his production company and became the new AVP. So that's us, and now we'll talk about why we use lighting, what lighting does for us that's different from other decor options. We feel like lighting can take an entire room and turn it into something different. There's lots you can do with centerpieces. There's lots you can do with linens. There's lots you can do with your chargers and your catering options, but that's all still confined to your table. There's other decor options. There's pipe and drape. There's props and stuff like that, but there's very little that you can shine out across a room and transform an entire wall, either the color or the pattern. Lighting is very versatile from that point of view. You can use the walls, the ceilings, the floors. You can tie the entire room together 360 degrees around, bring it all together into a really beautiful thing. The other great thing about lighting is it can hide and it can showcase great architecture or poor architecture. For example, this floor today, this is a white floor we use for videotaping, but it hasn't been painted in a couple of weeks. But I don't think anyone probably noticed that as they came in, because lighting allows you to draw your eye and take it away from the detracting items and emphasize the stuff that looks really good. So if you have a room with really great architecture, you've started with something really nice, now you can highlight it and make it look even better. Cost-effective compared to other methods. I don't know any other method of transforming an entire room. So that's what we love about illumination, is it's very transformative. You can take, as I've said, that whole room and change it from one thing to another. The other great thing about lighting, and the thing that really makes brides look for it, is that it allows you to personalize a venue that may have been used by dozens of other brides. When your friends use the same venue as you and use the same planners as you, things can get repetitive. Lighting is highly customizable. You can change your colors, you can change your patterns, you can change where it's projected, how it's projected. So much you can do to really create a personalized experience for your bride. And we think that that's, for you guys as planners, something that's really valuable, is it gives you that ability to create for them, which is what you guys do so well. So lighting, I think, is a good layer that you can add to that. So let's look at a little before and after thing. We're going to go black out here and switch on the overhead lights. So, I mean, this is a warehouse, right, guys? This is our warehouse. We store all of our equipment back there. We do some video production on this wall right here. But when you walk into a ballroom, you don't know what you're going to get. You get some overhead lights. Some ballrooms have color-changing lights installed, but the guy who knows how to program them isn't here today, and you never know what you're going to get. So lighting gives you control of what people experience as they come in. It also gives you control over the first impression, which we hope that as you guys came in, I know, Sanford Drive out there, it's warehouses, right? But you come in here, and we hope that you came in and you saw a room that felt like an event. And as you can see, a lot of it has to do with lighting since we've gotten rid of it. All right. Your initial basic package that a lot of different vendors are going to offer you is going to be something very similar to what you're seeing right now. What we've got is our LED uplighting, which is uplights on the wall, as well as the custom monogram projection here on the ground. So let's break this down a little bit. LED uplighting and a gobo projection. So what's an LED uplight? Well, and you guys absolutely feel free to look around and see. We've got the monogram projected on the floor here. LED is a light-emitting diode, a variety of semiconductor that converts electrical potential into a monochromatic wavelength of light. Yeah. So that's the problem that we often encounter between technicians, people who work in the lighting field, and you guys as planners, is we're speaking a very different language. So we're going to try to take some of those things, clarify them, and let you guys really experience the different things that can be done with this technology. So let's try that again. An LED is a kind of light. It gives us control over the color. You see we switched to blue. We had a nice sort of purplish look as you guys came in. So we can control the color of these. We can control the intensity. The other great thing about these is they are cool to the touch. Traditional uplighting, we used to use incandescent lights. I know you've all changed light bulb. They're hot, right? The last thing you want is for some poor little 6-year-old ring bearer to trip over one of those and burn his face on one of those uplights. So that's a great thing about the LEDs, is that they give us that cool operating temperature. Last thing, how many events have you been at where you had to run and find a breaker because something tripped? It could be your caterer, it could be any number of things. Well, traditionally, your lighting vendors consumed a lot of electricity, and that would be a real difficult thing to deal with, is trying to find all the juice to power all that stuff, but LEDs remove that. All of these right now, everything in this room is plugged into one wall circuit, everything on the floor right now. One wall circuit can power all these. Typically, we would have looked at 3 or 4 lights per wall circuit, and then you'd have to multiply that out. So very easy for us to power a bunch of these all at once and make them very usable. Second part of it, an uplight. We call these LED uplights. Well, an uplight is exactly what it sounds like. It's a light shining up on a wall, and give you a little bit of an idea of why this looks special to us. Well, we're human beings. We're used to having the sun overhead for the millions of years that we evolved. The sun overhead, the lights overhead, the chandeliers overhead, that's what we're accustomed to. The uplight gives you a whole different look. It's something you don't see a lot of, which is why even though it is just light, it's just light on a wall, but putting it in an upward thing is a whole different thing than what we're used to day to day. You can use them to uplight a wall or an architectural feature, a plant. Lots of things you can do with these uplights beyond just lighting a wall. Great thing about uplights, they can change colors during the event. You don't have to pick your color initially. So we're going to give you the idea that your packages, obviously you can add more lights and you can do cooler things with a bigger, more expensive lighting package. But with some of these technologies, you've already got these lights here. Why not change the color during the event? So imagine you have one color as your guests arrive, one color for the cocktail hour, one color for your first dances, and one color as dinner picks up or as your partying picks up. It allows you to customize not only the room, but customize the individual segments of your evening. It gives you control over that. This particular event, we actually had the lights scrolling through colors over the course of the night. I believe this is Carolyn and Matt. I can't quite read that monogram up there. But they wanted the room to change over the course of the evening and continue to change. A nice thing that does for you is it fights eye fatigue. When you walk into a room and everything is lit in one color, your eye very quickly starts to correct for that color, and you lose the saturation. It's why we can look at outdoor light and indoor light and have the same brightness. Our eyes adjust to different lighting conditions very quickly. So by changing the color, by having some contrasting colors, your eye doesn't wear out quite so quickly. So that's another nice thing that LEDs do for us, is it allows us to keep it fresh over the course of the night. We can mix things up and have a lot of fun. That's what we call a dynamic color rotation, or just lights that fade from color to color over the course of the day. The other fun thing about these guys is you can put them into a music mode. So as your band or DJ's picking up, the lights can chase to the music, bouncing through lots of different looks. And these days, there are very simple controllers for these guys. Your lighting vendor can probably give you a controller that has big buttons on it that say red, green, blue, music mode. So what that means is the technology has given us abilities to do things very simply, so you don't have to pay for a lighting technician to be there all the time. Certainly you can if you want that comfort and confidence that there's someone there to babysit things, but you don't have to have it. The technology has caught up. You can have a groomsman and say, hey man, go push green. We want green going right now. So, other part of this package is the gobo that we have on the floor. The word gobo, the etymology of that, the word origin, people aren't totally agreed upon, but we think it means something like it goes between the light and the wall. Goes between, gobo, something like that. But basically, it's a pattern that you put in a lighting fixture to give it a cutout. Think of it as a cookie cutter for a light. So we take that stamp, we put it in there, and we get that custom projection there, which we have on the ground right now. There are lots of different kinds of gobos. For you guys, the thing to take away from this little section is being able to talk to your lighting planner confidently about what technology they're proposing for your customer. We've actually got a bunch of these gobos sitting around the centerpiece. You can feel free to pick those up and look at them. But I'll give you a little trick or a little trip through what your different options here are and why we use different gobos for different needs. Traditional gobos are made of metal. It's a thin piece of metal that actually goes in the light and casts that shadow. They're cut out on a laser cutter, so you can get relatively good detail, but not super high resolution. The other thing about the gobos, the metal ones, is if you think about the letter O, well, an O has a free-floating center, right? So if you have a cookie cutter, a piece of metal that cookie cuts that O out of the middle, that O is going to fall away because it's not attached. So with metal gobos, you don't have the ability to do any kind of design that you might be looking for. There are limitations as to what you can design for a metal gobo. Next level up from there is a glass gobo. Now these are really neat. Instead of being laser cut out of a piece of metal, it's a printing process that happens between a plate of glass. And this table back here, I think you guys have the, you have a couple of the colored ones, but you've also got one that has a mermaid on it somewhere. And if you guys just, after you've looked at that, pass that around, you can hold that up to the light and you can see that there's very high resolution and very fine detail in those glass gobos. So a glass gobo is more expensive, but you get better resolution, better detail out of your image. The other thing a glass gobo can do that a metal gobo can't is it can have different colors and different shades of gray. So whereas a metal gobo is just a cutout, it's just a cutout, a glass gobo can have grayscale and different colors and things like that. So again, you can customize that lighting look to the next level. You can do exactly what you're looking for with that glass gobo. Sort of between the two is a new technology. It's an acetate gobo, which you can actually print locally. You don't have to ship it away to a laser cutting facility or a glass etching facility. The acetate gobos is actually what we're using here. But again, they have some limitations. They're great in that they're easy to turn around. You can manufacture them locally. So if you have a last minute event or something like that, they're a really good option for that. Limitations of them, well, they have to be in a special kind of lighting fixture, a lighting fixture that blows cool air across the acetate surface. It's a piece of plastic. If it went in that lighting fixture without that little refrigeration unit, it would melt and you'd have a big globby mess. The other limitation to these guys is that they are limited in how bright of a fixture you can put it in. So if you're trying to do a gobo projection on the outside of a building that people are arriving at sunset, you're not going to get the brightness you need out of an acetate gobo. You're going to want to look at glass or metal for something like that. But the acetates are really neat. We use them all the time for indoor stuff. The only other limitation of them is they're only good for about 20 hours before they start to fall apart and break apart. Weddings, 4 hours, not ever a problem for us. But if you're doing a long-term, sometimes multi-day event, or some of you might also work in the corporate world, do some corporate events, maybe not the best alternative, even though it is cheaper than the glass. Metal gobos, custom gobo, typically going to be around $100 somewhere to have that produced, starting at $300 for the glass. Acetate, depending on the complexity, somewhere in the middle between those two. The actual piece of plastic isn't the cost driving factor there. The custom fixture, the special fixture that it has to go in, is where some of the cost of those acetate gobos come from. So, gobos can look like just about anything. We've got the one from Nicole and Chris's wedding this past weekend on the floor down here. And then you can design them any font, any layout. You can put initials. Again, this is something we would not be able to do with the glass gobo or with a metal gobo, right? Because once we cut this ring out for the light to go through it, this whole centerpiece would fall away. So a design like this, you'd need to use a glass or an acetate gobo. So the design gives you a little bit of a limitation, the brightness that you need, the length of the event. With the glass gobos and the acetate gobos, of course, you can layer in different tones and different colors. So this one has a pure white and then a shaded W in the background. We do that for legibility, but it can also be a design decision to make it look a little bit differently. So I want to take just a quick second to talk about color selection. As you can see, these LEDs can create the whole rainbow of color. It's a really neat feature of these guys. You can bring them into your venue, dial in exactly what you're looking for while taking into account the colors of the walls and things like that. So when you're picking colors, the initial impulse is typically to match your wedding colors. Well, that can look great. It really can, especially if you have two wedding colors that are used throughout and you can focus one color, say, on your table and one color on the walls. That can look really good. Let's say your color is blue, though, and you've got blue linens and blue invitations, and now your walls are blue. Everything is just kind of muddy together. So we want to look for some contrast somewhere in the design, and your lighting is a great place to do that contrast. You have your tables and everything that are designed to match your wedding invitations and put all that stuff together. Go ahead and take the walls in a different direction. Why not? Or you can do, because the LEDs allow you to pick different colors at different times, you could do a feature wall, maybe behind your head table, behind your love table, in your wedding color, and then have everything else contrast that so your eyes don't wear out looking at the same color all day long. Also, you want to consider that the venue, the walls of the venue are going to greatly impact your lighting color. Air walls in particular tend to be a dark gray for some reason. The big divider walls between ballrooms tend to be a dark gray. That does not pick up coloring very well. So you're going to want to work with your lighting professional to make sure that the colors your bride is looking for are even physically possible in that room. The way lights interact with pigments can be really strange sometimes. Of course, an option is what we've done over here. If you can't get the color you want on the wall, you can bring in some white pipe and drape, cover the wall that way. Most white pipe and drape tends to be pretty sheer like that, so you can see we've double layered this. We have a black pipe and drape behind it, and then the white pipe and drape in front of it. So that allows us to take that wall back there, which actually is green. Remember I talked we're a video production studio as well. That whole wall is painted green for green screen work. Would not work for a wedding. So pipe and drape is a great option. If the walls just aren't working for you, throw up some pipe and drape, light them in whatever color you want, customize a wall that could otherwise be challenging. Last thing to consider is always the impact that your lighting design is going to have on the other pieces of your wedding. Okay, so a lime green is a fairly popular color, especially for centerpieces and things like that. Probably not a lot of brides want to be seen in a lime green wedding dress. So you can look at your tables right now and see that the tables are actually picking up the colors splashing off the wall. So this table right here has picked up that blue tone. This table over here has picked up that green tone. Well, if your bride in her white wedding dress is standing over there near the green light when her wedding pictures are taken, might not be the picture she was looking for. So definitely consider that as you're putting together your lighting packages and talking with your lighting vendor about how it's all going to interact, how it can come together with your color selection. So that was a basic package. Now let's add a couple other things and take it a little bit beyond the basics here. All right. So let's talk about what we're seeing. Obviously, the walls changed color. We went to our red color instead of a blue. The other thing we've added here is we've added the table pin spotting. I know a lot of you guys have worked with pin spotting before. We'll talk about some gotchas and some considerations and fun things you can do with the pin spotting. So the pin spots are there. We've also added a gobo breakup pattern over here on the dance floor to give that some added interest. So we'll start with pin spots. What is a pin spot? Well, it's a narrow light. Basically all it is. A pin spot is a narrow light. There are lots of different kinds of pin spots that probably doesn't matter so much to you guys. But what a pin spot does is it allows you to draw attention to a particular piece. We know we can use a pin spot to feature an item, either a table or a cake or even an architectural feature. You can use that pin spot to draw your eye to that. If you guys were to step back out of this room and come back in, your eye would come immediately to the centerpieces because we now have that light drawing your attention to it. There are some gotchas with pin spots that we can talk about, but there are lots of ways you can put pin spots up in the air. The first gotcha is, well, how do we do them? Not every venue has a beautiful truss structure suspended in their room ready to put a pin spot up. So we have a couple different ways we can put pin spots up. You see in the back corners of this room, the poles with the pin spots, but you can see these pipe and drape poles over here have been dressed in white, so there are lots of ways you can dress those poles to make them blend into the room. So you do sort of a pole structure. You can also do either a truss of some kind. If you have air wall in your ballroom, pin spots can be affixed to the air wall overhead. Even drop-in ceiling tiles. We can pop out the drop-in ceiling tiles, put in a replacement tile that has mounting points for pin spots. That tends to be very labor-intensive, but it can be done. So there are lots of ways to get this effect in all different kinds of venues. Some things you need to consider with these, as we said, there are a few gotchas. It's going to be very important if you're pin spotting that you coordinate between your lighting vendor, your caterers, and your florists. Very often you go to set your tables, you go to put your chairs together, and things have to be nudged a little bit in one direction or another. Well, once the pin spots are focused, it's very hard to bring a ladder back in and refocus things. So you want to be sure you schedule those items in an order that makes sense. Your lighting guys are probably going to want to come in after your tables are in place. And then everyone else needs to know from that point on the tables can't be moving. It's got to be locked in place from that point on. With your centerpieces, a little trick to focus them. Again, you can help your lighting vendor with this, but if you focus the pin spot right at the center of the table, when this tall piece comes in, only the bottom of it is going to be lit. So what you want to do as you go to make sure these pin spots are focused in the right place as you check with your lighting vendor, is just put your hand right in the middle of the table, right where you think the height of the pin spot's going to be. Don't focus it on the floor of the table. Focus it right at the height where you think you're going to want your emphasis to be. And then when your centerpiece comes back in, it should be nicely lit. Another thing to consider is tall centerpieces. If you have a real tall centerpiece and there's a light coming in at an angle hitting this centerpiece, well, that could mean the light is in the eyes of the people at the far side of the table. I'm not a fan of tall centerpieces. I think they get in the way as you're talking to people around the table. But that's just another thing to keep in mind when you put your tables together, is that tall centerpieces with pin spotting don't always work great. You can imagine if I were sitting at this table right here on this side, that light would be coming across the room and hitting me right in the eyes. In this case, it didn't matter because all the tall stuff was around the perimeter of the room. There weren't people seated at these tables. Other piece we have here is a breakup pattern that we've put on the floor here. Breakup pattern is just another kind of gobo, a kind of projection, and what it's used for is bringing emphasis to an area. It's used to take an area, light it in a color, but still give it some interest in visual pattern. It's also a great way to set a certain area off from everything else. So, for example, in this next picture that's going to come up, the bride and groom didn't have an actual dance floor installed. There was a tile floor in this room, but they wanted there to be a visual difference between the center area that was used as the dance floor and the rest of the room. So dance floor packages can combine perhaps a color wash as well as a gobo. Color wash is just a wash of color across an area. In this picture, you can see we have an amber wash of color going across the floor, and then that purpley magenta breakup pattern coming in. So the two things contrast. Remember, we're always looking for a little bit of contrast in our lighting design somewhere so that our eyes don't wear out. But it gives us that visual interest, that visual delineation between the dance floor and the rest of the room. So this sort of patterned wash is a great way to take that dance floor area and make it something special and different from the rest of the room. It also looks good with the monogram on the floor. It gives it kind of a frame, again, contrast between the monogram itself and then the blue pattern that we've projected around it. So it gives us a nice little visual, cohesive look that all comes together. So what's next after we talk about our wall uplighting, our gobos, our monogram projections? Well, the next thing we want to do is try to bring the rest of the room into play, try to put it all together, take advantage of some of the other surfaces that don't always get used when the lighting design is coming together. So what we're seeing now is we've brought the ceiling into play. We've got a color wash overhead. We just talked about the color wash on the dance floor. Now we've taken that color wash and raised it up to the ceiling. So we've got this blue color wash across there, and then again, a gobo pattern. This happens to be a star field, which is a real popular thing. It's a real romantic feel. And it ties in together with the walls. Again, you notice we've toned the blue of the walls down a little bit. We've added a little bit of red to these so we get some visual contrast between the two. And our bar back there, we threw some red in as well so that it all sort of contrasts each other but still comes together in a cohesive way. Theming and patterning like this is very, very versatile. The manufacturers who make gobos have hundreds of different pattern items like this that are available. The stars are a great thing, but you can also use some sort of repeating motif, something that you may have used in your design for your invitation or your menu, stuff like that. So you can tie, if you want something a little funky, a little bit different, you can tie that into the wall, splash it all the way across the venue, splash it across the ceiling, make things look totally different and totally unique. Again, because of that giant catalog of images that are available, a bride can really customize and look for something that's really unique to her. Of course, as we also know, we can build custom gobos, so if there's something very specific they're looking for, it can be done. It's also a great way to put together, perhaps, a whole different look. So again, that was just a lighting change, right, guys? We didn't change anything else in the room other than throw on some different lights. So we've used the same overhead space, now has a different pattern to it and a different color, now going into more of a jungle kind of theme here. As well as we've brought in some moving gobos here along this wall. Again, we're looking at those contrasting colors, the oranges and the yellows and the greens, all trying to tie that together so that it looks good with each other. And making something that's just really a little bit crazy, but you never know when you have that customer who really wants to take things to the next level. You know you can do it. We're using these 4 lights up here. They're called moving lights or automated lights or intelligent lights. What those do is those allow us to program lots of different things all at once. We can program where it's pointing, we can program what color it is, we can program what pattern is loaded up in it, what gobo is indexed in there, as well as we can do things like make it rotate and spin, stuff like that. Same lights, different colors, different patterns. So again, we're talking about the versatility and the ability to customize and really change things. So imagine this, maybe not during your cocktail hour and your first dance, but you could go to something a little more funky like this as the dancing picks up. The room gets a little more energetic. Lots of cultural reasons to use gobos in projections. This sort of ties into the henna look that a lot of Indian brides are looking for. There are also some great geometric patterns that tie in really well with Middle Eastern architecture and the real cool mosaic work that you see in buildings overseas. So these kind of patterns, you can imagine them either, fairly compartmentalized on a wall, or you can take the light to the other side of the room and splash it all the way across the wall in a giant sort of swatch of pattern and color that swoops across the room. Again, you notice we're switching up colors as we go along, showing you guys some of the different combinations you can look for, both overhead, on the front wall, and on the back wall. So now we're starting to show some contrast between different areas of the room and bring it together in different combinations. So very versatile. That's one thing you really want to keep in mind about lighting, is there are lots of different things you can do with it. Different patterns, different colors, different movements and programming, and all kinds of fun things that are available for your bride to customize her experience at her wedding and to take that ballroom, transform it into her own event. It's a uniquely custom look is what you can accomplish with lighting. Now, I know you guys were looking at a winter-themed wedding coming up here before too long, so we threw this together. Seasonal weddings, you can tie them in with the season. Do a winter design. You could do a fall with a leaf breakup pattern and some warm colors. All kinds of different combinations. We saw those suns going along earlier. Just think about how different the room feels from when we had the jungle theme with the warm colors and the suns versus what we've got now with the snowflakes and the cool colors. It totally changes the feeling of the room, as well as just imagine, again, the first impression as you walk into a room where it's been taken from just being a plain white wall to something really special and customized for your event. That's not to say you have to do it all inside. There are lots of options for outdoor weddings and tent weddings as well. This overhead canopy that we have installed for today, imagine that was a tent surface. So the projections we've been doing up there with stars and jungle theme and different colors, a tent surface is a giant canopy just waiting to be lit and have something done with it. That's true inside and outside. Looking at that ceiling as an available canvas to you as part of your room design is really, really valuable. There are different kinds of tents. We know there are pole tents and there are frame tents. I've got two pictures of frame tents to show you some different ways we can put lighting up in tents. This tent right here, we've done sort of a truss structure between the poles. This was my wedding, so I like truss and moving lights, right? So this to me was just the perfect kind of design. Some brides, maybe not so much. You want to do something a little more low-key that's not so techie looking. This event over here, we use what's called a wagon wheel system. It looks exactly like a wagon wheel that bolts onto the outside of the tent and gives us these mounting locations up at the top of the tent pole where we can put our lighting design together. You'll see in both of these some of the things we've talked about so far. In this tent, we've got a color wash, a nice amber color wash across the ceiling. We've got a very light blue color wash, similar to what we've done on the tables right now, just a gentle blue color wash across the tables. And then the pin spotting on the centerpieces to draw the attention there. This again, my wedding, we went a little more funky. We had some spinning, swirling gobos up in the air, colors changing, all kinds of fun stuff like that. So the technology gives you those options, those ability to create customized looks. When you're working in a tent, one thing to keep in mind is your power runs, because tents don't have outlets all along the walls like ballrooms do. This is true for tents, this is true for outside. Again, you want to be sure you coordinate between your tent vendor and your lighting vendor. What you can do with tents, I don't know how many of you have watched a tent go together, but they're typically laced together in seams, and those seams exist everywhere there's a pole. You can actually lace your power cables into those seams so the power comes up invisibly through the inside of the tent and then down the tent pole. That way you're not having power cables laying across the ground or trying to carpet over them or something like that. So again, coordination between your vendors is going to be key whenever you bring in a lighting professional. Both in a ballroom, they're going to want to talk about power, load-in times, things like that. In a tent, there are some specific things that need to be worked out between your different vendors ahead of time. Outdoor spaces, if you don't have a tent, well, that's great. There's still lots of stuff you can do with an outdoor space. This one over here, this was actually an event down in Miami that was a lot of fun, and this event took place on a pool deck. So we had this big open area of concrete gray that they wanted to do something different with, and who could blame them? Very similar to what we've been talking about. The fundamentals are the same. The technology that we're applying to this is all the same, but it's different color combinations and different pattern combinations that create the unique look for that event. So we were going for a sort of a Havana kind of look here, so we emulated a little palm tree banana kind of look in the breakup pattern, as well as some kind of fun geometric breakup patterns through some of the area there. So we've got a pink color wash. You can see that pink color wash going throughout the entire area, and then the amber breakup pattern giving it that visual interest. And then the last thing is over there where we have those were actually service tables behind that little Cuba set. A bright blue light to just sort of offset everything, provide that visual contrast that we're looking for. So area lighting is what we're talking about here, taking a big area and covering it with lighting. So how do you do that? Where do you put the lights? Well, in this case, these were 24-foot sticks of truss that we strapped to the sides of palm trees. So there are lots of options. You can come out, attach stuff non-invasively to a tree with a strap around it. The club thought we were a little crazy when we did that, especially when we wheeled the scissor lift out into the sand to get up to one tree. It was a little bit of an adventure, but there are lots of ways you can get that lighting out there. You can also use uplighting outside. Outdoor uplighting looks really great with bushes and big trees. We just recently did an event at Maymont outside the Dooley Mansion where they have those big, beautiful trees outside of the mansion. We threw up some real bright, saturated color in those trees. Totally transformed the look of the entire garden out there. So lots of great stuff you can do with outdoors. And some other things you want to keep in mind with outdoors, some very practical considerations. Outdoor weddings, they don't have parking garages, they don't have sidewalks, they don't have safety lighting already installed. So if you're doing outdoor either at a garden or a private residence or something like that, be sure you think about some of the practical needs that your lighting might have. Pathway lighting so people can get back to their cars, parking area lighting for safety. An often neglected one for outdoor events is the portable restrooms. People don't think to provide lighting in that area. It's not fun. And your service tents. Don't forget about your poor caterers trying to rinse dishes in the dark on your way out for the evening. So again, coordination between your vendors, coordination with your venue, looking at all aspects and all areas where lighting can contribute to your event. Last thing for outdoor events, probably already on your radar, but power considerations. We know that LED technology has given us lower power consumption, but we still have our GoBo projectors and our pin spots and stuff that's more traditional technology. Typically, your lighting vendor is going to be the person with the most power requirements of anyone else at your event. Caterers can often use propane-powered chafing dishes, 1 or 2 circuits for warmers, things like that. Your band, probably 2 circuits, a DJ 1 circuit. Lighting, 10 or 12 electrical circuits, depending on what you've ordered. So outdoors, there are options. You can bring in a generator. New generator technology is as quiet as a car running, and your lighting vendor can help you with that. As the guy using the most electricity, it is perfectly reasonable for that person to be also your power vendor. So you can have your lighting company bring in the power, provide it for your other people who may need it, your band and your caterers. Again, coordination between vendors, especially when you bring in lighting because it's such a different thing overall. So that's sort of our packages, our uplights, our downlights, our pin spotting we've talked about, different color combinations, things like that. There are some other items you can bring in either from a lighting vendor or from a rental vendor, still sort of in the lighting world, but things that can specialize your event and make it to the next level. The illuminated bars we've talked about, well, we've got one back there. It's lit in a little bit of green now to contrast with our red. Great thing about those bars, you can also further customize them with vinyl stickers on the front. So our custom monogram that we've designed for our bride, well, we can take that and slap it right on the front of the bar. This is one of the most highly trafficked areas of a wedding, is the bar. And how many times have we been to a wedding where it was that cheap plastic rental hotel bar stuck in the corner of the room? If your guests are going to be congregating in this area, it's a great opportunity for some serious customization, doing some really cool special stuff for your bride. So we've got uplighting, that sheer pipe and drape, as well as the monogram along the front here. Again, this was a corporate event, but more and more brides are looking for this high-end kind of thing. We're seeing it more and more at weddings. So the illuminated bar is a great way to bring some lighting and some illumination design to some other areas of the room. Overhead lighting options. Well, the terrazzo or piazza lights just came up here. Some people just call them lighting strands. I like piazza lights because it has a nice European flavor to it. Piazza lights look great outside. They also look great for bringing the outside inside. So if you have a ballroom or a tent or something and you want to really capture that outdoor feel, some overhead party lights kind of like this look really good. These ones, again, have a little bit of a European flavor to them. Twinkle lights or Christmas lights, everyone's familiar with. Wrapping trees with those. It can look good. Sometimes it looks a little cheap. This is a little more high-end look as compared to the Christmas lights strung between the trees. You can also do different options with chandeliers. You remember that tent picture? I should have pointed them out when we were back, but the tent picture that was on this wall, You might have also seen the chandeliers hung between the poles. So your lighting vendor can typically bring in chandeliers, and the design variation there, just like we've got massive design options with our colors, same thing exists in your practical items that you might bring in. So chandeliers, there's really great looking traditional stuff out there, either to rent or overstock.com. I mean, you can buy great chandeliers for $70, somewhere like that. There's also some really neat new stuff like beaded chandeliers. If you go into a ballroom, you can unscrew the recessed ceiling lights, screw in these beaded chandeliers, and they both hang from that and they're powered from that with a color changer in them. So you've got this great beaded chandelier with a little color rotation going on through it, which can look really nice. Of course, Chinese lanterns, everyone knows what they are. They're paper lanterns strung between. They're a little risky. They can either tend to come across as the wedding planned at party, whatever the party store on Broad Street is. Yeah, you don't want your decor to look like it came from the party store. So if you're talking about Chinese lanterns and stuff like that, try to kick it up. Do something really big or something real high-end or custom looking so that you don't run into that problem. Probably rely on a lighting vendor to get that stuff wired up for you, unless you're really good and have a lot of experience in overhead rigging and making sure things aren't going to fall on people. Probably best to bring in someone to put this kind of stuff overhead for you. Lighted centerpieces, well, we had these on when we came in earlier today. We've been pin spotting them since then, but I just killed the pin spot, so again, you can see your lighted centerpieces. A couple different things you can do with these. They look pretty cool with just a stem in them. A little more funky kind of thing that people are doing lately. You can put different colored fruits in those guys and light them from underneath. Again, that uplighting just has such a different look from lights that come overhead. So we've just switched from the pin spot to the uplighting and lighted centerpiece. And there are lots of options for these, from this, which is just a simple lighted base, all the way up through spandex forms and stuff like that with ostrich feathers coming out of them with color changers in them. So lots of really neat stuff that can be done there. Specials. Well, a special is very simply a light pointed at a thing to draw attention to it, similar to a pin spot, but not pin spotting. So if you look back at the cake, I've just brought up a special on the cake. What we have now is a white spotlight hitting the cake, because we don't really want to change Kara's cake too much. It's a beautiful white cake. We don't want to colorize that too much. But we do have a rotating color wash behind it to draw some visual attention to it. We try to keep it a little bit subtle. But when you first walk into a room, again, we had that look up when you guys first came in, and hopefully it catches your eye just a little bit. It creates a focal point for the room. So if you just look around the room, you can see, again, we've shifted the color there. We've brought the brightness up just a little bit. So that special draws your attention right to there. So it becomes a focal point of the entire room. Slightly different color combinations make it pop out and look different from everything else. We talked about these moving lights up here. Well, your lighting vendor can often provide moving light packages for your band or DJ if they don't have them. So remember, we also talked about the lights being able to go into a music mode where the lights can change color to the music. So imagine you've had this nice subtle blue uplighting over the course of your evening, and now the band or DJ kicks up into high mode. You can put these things in a color chase or a music mode and really jazz the room up a little bit. Also, you see the moving lights, dancing to the music, lots of different gobos and patterns and colors going on in those guys. So again, that's something a lighting vendor can provide if your band or DJ doesn't already have a lighting package. Go out, try to add that to your package, build things up, make it a little more high-end. The other great thing about these moving lights is they can be programmed for specialty entrances. So say your bride and groom want to have a custom entrance where they come into the room and all of a sudden all the lights swing through the air and land on them as they enter the room. That's what moving lights are great for. They can be programmed to do all kinds of different stuff. Not just colors and patterns, but also different positions and moving around the room. All right, so we've been through color combinations and pattern combinations and different things you can do on the tables and different pin spotting options, different stuff we can do overhead, different stuff we can do on the floor, lots of different ways you can put this stuff together. There's just such a wide variety of things that are available to you. Always what we're looking to do is to personalize the event for the bride. That's true for the venue. Again, no one wants to have the same old in the venue time after time again. So that personalization is what we think lighting is just amazing at. So keep those different combinations in mind. Think about different ways you can take a room and take it away from being the same old downtown ballroom and really transform it into a different kind of thing for your customer. That said, we want to go through two more things here for you guys, some stuff that is just starting to really take off and that we think is a whole lot of fun, and it's what we can do with projection technology. Now, I've been using that over the course of this entire presentation with a couple different video projectors so that we can see different things on different walls at different times. You can take that and apply it to a wedding. So imagine you have a tent and everyone's seated for dinner. Well, a lot of people do photo montages of their bride and groom, but they'll put them on a screen like that, or they'll put them on a little pop-up projection screen somewhere. Why not project that photo montage across the entire tent? Or use a couple of different projectors so that, you know, that old Apple screensaver where the pictures are coming up at different times? Imagine that over the course of the entire tent above your bride and groom's head. Stuff like that looks really good. Or say your first dance. Well, you've got your beautiful lighting design with your themes tied together. You've got your custom gobo on the floor, which we know looks great for those first dance photos with the bride and groom with their names at their feet, the beautiful colors. But imagine as a background, instead of just the wall or the color, the whole room transformed into their photo montage. So think about the photographs right now, guys. If I'm the photographer stepping back right here and I take this picture, well, for some reason I've got my business partner dancing in front of my wedding photos, which is a little strange, but the visual is just so compelling. And anytime you have a big wall available to you, or you could transform it, you could use pipe and drape to create that projection surface to give you that area where you can really transform a room. You want to customize something for a bride and groom. How about making the bride and groom part of the actual decor? So some really cool stuff you can do with digital projection technology, photo montage being one of them. I did not tell my wife that I would be using our photos in the presentation, so shh. One other option here, something you can consider, really transforming an entire room, wrapping it in a custom theme, something very specialized. Lots of different options with video. With Lighting Weekend, we know we can project anything we can imagine. We can create those projections. We can do the same thing with video. We can animate, we can create, we can design, and we can project it on the walls in a very customized manner that is totally different from anything anyone else is doing. So you can consider really transforming a room, large venue, small venue, or again, the whole overhead surface of the tent. If you look up again, you'll see we have a little ripple effect over your heads to sort of tie this all together and bring the underwater theme all into one. All right, guys, well, enjoy your cake. Enjoy finishing up your drinks and stuff. Thank you very much for coming. It was really a pleasure to show you guys through this stuff. Let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to help out anytime, all right? Thanks.